A few hours ago, one of the most dominant fighters on the planet walked into the octagon undefeated. 17 wins, 0 losses. The kind of record that makes people call you invincible. And by the fourth round, Ilia Topuria's corner stopped the fight. And just like that, the undefeated was defeated. Not because he wasn't prepared, not because he didn't belong there, but because that's what happens when you compete at the highest level long enough. Eventually, the loss comes. For everyone, without exception. And most people know that in theory. They'll nod along to it, but they haven't actually prepared for it. Not really. And that difference between knowing defeat is coming and actually being ready for it is everything. That's what this video is about. Let's get into it. The first thing you need to understand is what defeat actually is, because most people experience it as a verdict, a final judgment on their worth, their capability, their right to keep going. And that is the most dangerous version of defeat, not the loss itself, but the story you build around it in the first hours after it happens. Defeat is information. It tells you something about your preparation, about your strategy, about the distance between where you are and where you need to be, but only if you're willing to read it without flinching. The moment you turn it into a verdict, it stops being useful and it starts being corrosive. So the work begins before the loss ever arrives, in the quiet times, when things are going well, when you still have enough distance to think clearly. Ask yourself the uncomfortable questions now. If this doesn't work out, what will that mean? What will I do? Who will I be on the other side of it? Not to invite failure, but to remove its power to paralyze you if it comes. The mind that has already walked through the worst is not afraid of the worst. It's ready for it. There is also something most people never talk about when it comes to defeat. The grief, because sometimes it genuinely hurts, and pretending it doesn't make you resilient. It just buries something that will surface later in ways you won't recognize. Topuria's brother wrote something this morning. In victory or in learning, always grateful to God for everything. There is grief inside that sentence. You can feel it. But there is also direction. Let yourself feel the loss. For a day, for 2 days. Sit with the disappointment, the embarrassment, the exhaustion of having tried and not gotten what you came for. And then, after you've let it move through you, you make a decision. You decide that the feeling was real, the loss was real, and your next chapter is also real. You don't skip the grief, you just refuse to build a home in it. Once the emotion settles, the real work begins. And that work requires a kind of honesty most people avoid. It's easy to review your wins. It feels good. It confirms the story you want to believe about yourself. Reviewing a loss is different. It asks you to look at the places you'd rather not look, the decisions you made that you already knew were wrong, the preparation you skipped, the moment where the gap was exposed. But that honest review is the only thing that converts a loss into fuel. If you defend the loss instead of studying it, you carry the same vulnerability into the next attempt, and the same loss finds you again, wearing a different face. There is also something most people never talk about when it comes to defeat, the grief, because sometimes it genuinely hurts, and pretending it doesn't make you resilient. It just buries something that will surface later in ways you won't recognize.
And here is the part that most people miss. The comeback is not optional. It is the whole point. No one will remember that you lost. They will remember what you did next. The loss gives you information. It gives you humility. It gives you a kind of hunger that comfort never produces. And that hunger, if you channel it correctly, is the most powerful thing you can carry into your next chapter. But the comeback doesn't happen in public. It happens in private, in the sessions nobody sees, in the early mornings where there is no applause, in the decision to go again before anyone is watching, before the validation comes, just you, the work, and the quiet refusal to let the last chapter be the last chapter. Here is what it all comes down to. Defeat is not the end of your story. It is the end of one chapter. And the chapters built after a real loss, built on honesty, on grief properly felt, on an identity that survived the result, those are always the most interesting ones. You don't have to be undefeated to be great. You have to be someone who gets back up every single time, without exception. Tell me in the comments, what's the defeat that changed you the most? The one that, looking back, taught you something no win ever could. Write it down, because that story might be exactly what someone else needs to read today. And if you want to understand why your mind keeps getting in its own way, even when you're trying your hardest, that video is right here. Go watch it now.